Dr. Ray Perryman. Thank you as always for being here with me today. What are the latest tariff updates? What stood out to you in recent days, recent weeks?
Well, part of the problem is things change all the time, and we don't know exactly what's going to be happening. I guess the biggest thing recently is we have postponed some of the most draconian tariffs on China, and seem to be working towards some kind of arrangement there, which is, I think, particularly important for consumers because we buy a lot of consumer goods from China, and that could lead to some very significant price increases around Christmas and that sort of thing if those were to go into effect at the levels that are talked about. So I think that's probably the biggest single one right now, and then just the fact that things continue to just move forward, and we have so many tariffs on so many different things in so many different countries. Uh, the imposition of a new tariff on Canada because of a television ad. Just the sheer randomness of it just adds to the uncertainty, which makes it very difficult for businesses to plan and for people to be willing to take the plunge and make big financial decisions.
Talk to me a bit more about those tariffs on Canada. Why were they implemented? What impact could they have?
Well, in essence, what it was said was that there was an ad quoting Ronald Reagan, who, like most Republicans historically, was supported free trade. I mean, I worked on a bunch of trade agreements, and that's always been the tradition because it's free markets. It's one of the things that the party was kind of founded on, and obviously the administration didn't like that ad, and so consequently they were imposing additional tariffs on Canada, which is again not really a good reason to make economic policy, obviously. But when it comes to Canada, they're one of our very largest trading partners. Mexico, Canada, and China are our three very largest trading partners by far. And we get a lot of things that go into building materials. For example, we get a lot of aluminum from Canada. We get a lot of lumber from Canada. We get some energy products from Canada. We get some steel from Canada. So there's a lot of different things, particularly the timber, the lumber industry. The folks who use that as an input to build things are going to be particularly hard hit.
I may be mistaken here, but I want to say I saw something relatively recently about more tariffs on lumber.
Right.
Do these talk to me a bit about those, what these new tariffs on Canada in particular could mean for that?
Well, basically, one of our largest sources of lumber in this country is from Canada, and they have very, very large forested areas, produce a lot of timber, high quality timber, and send it to the United States. They have been in that situation for years, and obviously, lumber is a big part. We have a housing shortage throughout the country, particularly here in Texas. We need to be building a lot of houses, a lot of commercial construction, that type of thing. All of those things are impacted by tariffs on things like lumber and steel and aluminum, the glass, the things that go into the building process. And so that can have a disproportionate impact in that particular industry, which is also struggling from some labor market impacts from some of the immigration policies as well. They're having a hard time finding workers.
And if my understanding is correct, I believe the Senate just voted to block the tariffs on Brazil, which I believe are around 50%. It's unclear whether that would go through the House, but what do you think that move means
Well,
for the tariffs?
it doesn't mean anything immediately because it won't go through the House. But I think what it does say is you now have five senators in the Republican Party saying we don't like tariffs, basically. And again, that is the traditional conservative view: is let's open up the markets and let people compete. That's always been the view. And as I say, I was involved in negotiations on trade agreements. You never had to convince conservatives about them. You might have to convince folks on the other side of the aisle. But I think one thing it says is you have five people who just made this vote. We're more than a year away from the midterms right now, and some of the pain is just beginning to be felt. I mean, at first, people stocked up on inventory before the tariffs, and then merchants are usually reluctant to pass the cost on at first. We're starting to see every month now a little bit more of it being passed on, and so I think as the practical reality of this sets in, I think you'll see our policies kind of back up a little bit from some of the tariffs. I don't think we'll get away from them completely, but I do think you'll see us back off some of these tariffs over the course of the next year, particularly before the midterms.
And people, it's almost November, which is crazy. But people start planning their holiday shopping, around now or even earlier. How could the tariffs change people's holiday shopping plans?
Well, a lot of things that we purchase for holidays, some of our major electronics items, toys, a lot of things we tend to purchase, a lot of clothing, are things we import most of, and virtually every place now has some level of tariff imposed on it. So we're going to see those costs of all the holiday shopping go up a little bit. We've also seen a little bit of a slowdown in the economy. It's not dramatic yet, but you can just look at the numbers. I mean, right here in Texas, we were averaging 20, 25, 30,000 jobs a month for forever. And in the last 4 months combined, we've only gained about 100,000, or I'm sorry, about 20,000 jobs in those 4 months combined. So we've definitely seen a big slowdown in the economy, and that also makes people a little bit jittery about Christmas shopping. So it's going to have some impacts. Things are going to cost a little more, and I think people are going to be a little more cautious.
Get out of it there. Did you say 20,000 jobs? Is that what I heard?
Texas has roughly averaged about 20,000 jobs a month for the last couple of decades, actually, and even more than that sometimes. And even this year, in January we had 25, in February we had 30, and in March we had 25, in April we had 30, and in May we had 20. And then since then, if you add all the months together, we only have about 20. And so there's been a definite slowdown. In fact, we had 1 month of negative job growth in Texas, which doesn't happen very often. So, and the same thing's true at the national level. And so we're beginning to see some signs, again, not of anything catastrophic or anything like that, but it's slowing down some.
Why is that?
Well, I think it's a combination of the tariff policies, the immigration policies, some of and then just the sheer uncertainty that comes with those, because uncertainty really causes people to be reluctant to do things. I mean, the Federal Reserve recognizes this; they've lowered interest rates again, but they also have to monitor inflation, which tariffs create problems there as well. So there's a lot going on right now, but I think the uncertainty, which is partially caused by the tariffs and immigration, is probably the single biggest factor happening right now. People just aren't sure what's going to happen next.
Just overall with these tariffs, what do you see, what should East Texans in particular know, heading into the next few weeks, few months regarding these tariffs?
Well, the next few months, we're going to be going through a transition period here, and it's going to be difficult. Things have slowed down some. One area in East Texas, I know, obviously with the Haynesville Shale and that sort of thing, one area is that the cost of steel going up 20% or so has meant the cost of pipe has gone up 20%. Big part, and most oil field equipment, big part of that industry, big part of decisions that are made about whether or not to drill and that sort of thing. And so that comes into play. Again, the holiday shopping, things are going to be a little more expensive. That comes into play. So it's the kind of thing that nobody really gets to escape this, because it's sort of universal. There've been situations in the past where the country might slow down a little bit and Texas didn't. This is not one of those times. We're also seeing some slowdown from this as well.